Hi, welcome to or back to Mutant Memories, my complete rereading of the classic run of the New Mutants. Today we're going over and talking about New Mutants issue number 8, which came out on June 10th, 1983. The people working on the book are mostly the same as the last issues. Chris Claremont is writing, Sal Buscema doing the pencils, and Bob McLeod inking again. I should also add in that Wheezy, or Louise Simonson, under the name Louise Jones at this time, was the editor, and even though I haven't talked about her a lot so far, she is very important in the classic run of the New Mutants, as well as just in general for Marvel. The title of this issue is The Road to Rome, so get ready, there are some things to go over with this issue. So first of all, I may have gotten some answers to the weird timeline thing in the past few issues. Connor reads Claremont, who is super cool and has a project where he is kind of doing a similar thing to this, except he is reading all of the X books Claremont wrote. I'll link him in the description. So Connor says that he has New Mutants 4 through 7 placed in the timeline before Uncanny X-Men 168, which makes a lot more sense than where I had seen it placed. So I think the mystery is solved because Connor knows a lot about this period of the X universe. So that is my update about this. Now we can talk about issue number 8. So issue 8 is the beginning of the Nova Roma plot, which I and I think many others who love this series might want to forget, but are also weirdly fascinated by. To me, these issues almost feel like a fever dream. We'll get more into this later in the video, but just trust me, the next few issues get, they're something unto themselves. I'm pretty excited to talk about them though, because especially in the next 2 issues after 8, I have a lot to talk about. I mean, all you have to do is look at this cover, and you know you're in for some weird shit. The splash page we see is Rain wandering through the jungle. The exposition explains how complex the jungle is and how much there is to experience, especially for Rain because she is from a very different place, that being Scotland. Rain continues to skulk through the grass, stalking an unnamed prey. After she hops up in a tree, it is shown that she is actually tracking Danny Moonstar, and the kids are honing their abilities by playing an impromptu game of hide-and-seek. It explains Danny is about to lose. And with that, Rain jumps out of the tree and says, "Boo!" This startles the unexpecting Danny. Danny is miffed and asks what Rain thought she was doing scaring her like that. Rain explains that she was it, and she was supposed to find Danny. That is her job. Danny reminds her it's all a game until her power goes off and attacks Rain. As Danny scolds Rain, Rain begins to feel very woozy and hot. Danny catches her as she begins to faint. Danny explains to Rain that she is not used to the environment and that she is probably getting too hot and the uniform she is wearing is probably not helping. Rain explains she cannot take off her uniform while the guys are around. Not far off, the boys are wondering why Rain hasn't found them yet, so they go to look for her when they hear little wolf noises that they are sure is Rain. When they do find Rain, they are surprised to see her in her wolf form rolling around in a bunch of cold snow. Danny is shown to be using her powers to show Rain what she wanted most at that moment. They ask Danny about this, and she responds that all that matters is that Rain thinks the snow is real. I don't think heat stroke can be cured by imagining it to be cold, but okay, maybe I'm being too logical about that. Sam notes that the game of hide-and-seek is most likely over, and that if nobody objects, he is going to fly around and do some exercises on his own. Sam flies off into the jungle, and it is explained that when Sam first got his powers, all he could do was fly in straight lines, and he would destroy anything that got in his way. Then he goes on to say that now he is able to maneuver, and it feels wonderful. But he soon gets cocky and doesn't pay attention, and Danny tries to warn him, but he ends up crashing into a tree and tearing it down. The tree almost hurts the other members of the New Mutants, but Bobby turns into his sunspot form and breaks the tree apart before it can hurt anyone. A while later, Rain comments that the forest is so lovely, but Birdo says it won't be lovely for long if people keep smashing it to bits. Danny tells Birdo Sam didn't mean to smash the tree, it wasn't on purpose. Birdo explains that through accident or design, the result is the same. Birdo sets up a small communication device and Professor Xavier appears on the screen and Birdo greets him. Birdo tells the professor he is looking well and the professor says same to him. Birdo explains he is sending over data on the training the New Mutants continue to do. Professor Xavier says he is impressed by the numbers. Birdo then asks if there's any news involving Shan, their lost comrade. Professor says there is none. When Birdo asks if they should maybe return home, Professor says no, they should remain where they are, and he has his hands full with the new arrivals to the X-Men and training Team America at the moment. He tells them to enjoy their holiday. After they get off the call, Danny says she feels like the professor is not telling them something about Shan's death. Berto explains that he thinks the professor just doesn't care. Danny says she would have once agreed with him, but not anymore. She wonders if the professor is somehow trying to protect them in some way. Sam says if the professor cares so much about them, why can't he trust them with whatever he seems to be hiding? Berto says that they are the ex-babies and basically no one treats them fairly. He then says the boat they are cruising in is on its way to them and they should be aboard soon. Danny starts to strip and says that she doesn't want to slog through the mud and she is going to swim across. Naturally, Sam asks her if she's crazy as she dives into the water. Then we see a random guy on the boat they are trying to get on, the one that they've been traveling on with Nina, and the man is commenting that the girl must not have listened to Nina and that it's a hot day and the water is cool and inviting. Then he holds a bucket of something up and says that the trash in the bucket will basically kill Danny somehow, and he hopes she enjoyed her life because it's about to end. So Danny sees the water near the boat begin to bubble, and for some reason just then she remembers there are piranha in the water and they will eat her alive. She sees that it's too late to retreat and decides to try and fight the fish. She uses her power on the fish and they begin to swim away. But then she calls out for Sam to rescue her with maneuver number 2 and holds out her hand. As Sam begins to blast forward, Bobby reminds him he will reveal his powers to the crew of the ship by doing this. Sam says it's too late and Danny is already in trouble. Sam comes and rescues Danny and she tells him not to rip her arm out of the socket. They rush over the crew of the boat and Nina, and then they crash into the shore. Danny says she appreciates the rescue, but it leaves things to be desired. And then we see several locals. We see some local women donning spears and shields and looking down at the two of them. Immediately, the local women begin to fight with Danny and Sam. So they fight with the women, but they end up beating the women and most of them run away. Danny turns to Sam and he is holding a girl hostage, and Danny says, "What you got, a souvenir?" Just know that I was cringing as I said that. He says, "She may look like a girl, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was a disguised wildcat." Then Sam begins to carry the girl away with him back to the boat, and Danny says she wonders what the girl was saying. Sam says if he knew he would probably blush. Danny says she wonders why the women were watching the boat, and Sam says he doesn't know, but maybe Bobby's mom would know. Danny is pretty sure that their troubles are not over. When they get back to the boat, the captain is fighting with the crew about the kids being on the ship. The crew explains that the kids are mutants and they didn't sign on to work with monsters. The person who poured the killer fish into the ocean says that up until today, all the crew thought the kids were just good kids. The captain thanks him for support. His name is Castro, and Castro says, "No problem, Jeff." The captain says he wants to go before the women regroup. The boat is shown going down the river, but things are going slowly because they are going against the current. We then see the kids and Nina and the local girl that Sam took as a prisoner. Danny says the skipper is posting guards for the night, and both Sam and Bobby volunteer to be sentries. Bobby's mom, Nina, is trying to talk to the girl they captured. She says she has tried every dialect and the girl doesn't seem to know any of them. Nina points out that one of the arrows the women used is local, but the other one is from Peru, 500 miles away. Also, Nina and Bobby note the knife that the girl they captured was carrying did not look Indian either, and it looked modern and of good craftsmanship. Nina asks the girl where she is from. In the darkness, the women who attacked Danny and Sam are watching the boat still. One says to be careful of the rifle that the people in the boat might have, and the other says that they have the upper hand. But another woman says they dare not strike in case they hurt Lady Amara, that they should wait for Amara to give the signal before they attack. Back in Rio de Janeiro, Bobby's father Emmanuel is talking to Shaw again at his mansion and says that Shaw's agent Castro has so far been unsuccessful at sabotaging the expedition, and that this is giving him less faith in the abilities of the Hellfire Club and makes him doubt if he wants to join or not.
Emmanuel, do not do it. Emmanuel, don't do it! Emmanuel!
Shaw says it's difficult to stop the expedition without harming Bobby or Nina. Shaw says this is especially hard when Bobby and his friends are all mutants. Emmanuel explains that there are many riches at stake because the area Nina is going to seems to be rich in minerals. Emmanuel says he will not let anyone keep him from it. Shaw says that's good to know, but he thought that Emmanuel still loved Nina. Emmanuel says his feelings have nothing to do with business, and if she had stayed home like a good wife, she would not be in his way. Then a few beautiful women enter the room and Shaw asks what they are doing there, and Emmanuel says they are the evening's entertainment. Shaw thanks him for being forever the perfect host. Back in Brazil, the captain and kids can see the place they are heading to along the Madeira. The scene is some beautiful mountains. The captain tells them in about a day they will start to hike towards them. Danny says she thought the mountains in Colorado were impressive, but the ones in Materia were something else. The captain goes on to explain that there is a legend that there is a hidden civilization in the mountains, but no one has ever found it, and some of the people who go looking don't ever come back. To this, Rain says, "We are following in their footsteps," and Sam says, "Some vacation." The captain tries to reassure them that they are just stories, but Danny says every legend has a basis in some fact. Bobby then points out the river is forking ahead of them. The captain tells them that the path to the left would smash the boat and most likely kill them all, and the water is very rough and they will not go that way. Moments later, Rain is very excited about their journey and bringing food and drink to the girl they are holding hostage. She hears voices from the room and walks in to Castro beating the girl. Rain tells him to stop, and he says that he won't and he will beat the girl for the information. Rain tries to stop him and he throws Rain to the side. Rain gets very angry and tells him he should not have done that. Castro asks her if this was a threat, and if she doesn't go away, he says he will hurt her. He then reacts in terror as Rain turns into her wolf form. She growls at him. Castro runs from the room terrified, screaming that she is a werewolf. Rain shifts back into her human form and tries to comfort the girl they're keeping hostage. She asks if Castro hurt her and tells her her name is Rain. She then remembers the girl cannot speak English. The girl repeats Rain's name and tells her Amara, which Rain understands is probably the girl's name. Rain tells her that she will untie her, but Rain then begins to get upset and cry. She apologizes to Amara for crying and says that she is a baby. Then she goes on to lament the fact that people view her as evil and frightening because of her power, but she isn't evil. She also explains it is simple when she is in her wolf form, and maybe she should just stay in that form forever. Then she says Amara probably didn't understand any of what she said, to which Amara responds, "Amara." Rain says she is glad that Amara doesn't understand English because she would have never actually dared to say those things to anyone. Rain leaves the room to tell Nina about Castro, and she sees the captain lying dead with an arrow in his back. A voice behind her says before too long she will be joining him. Rain turns just in time to be hit with the blunt end of a gun by Castro. Rain slowly comes into consciousness and asks why she is always the one being hit over the head, which is funny because she does get hit over the head a lot. She finds herself in a room with the rest of the New Mutants and Nina, who are in various states of being asleep and awake. Rain tells Bobby Castro hit her, and Bobby says he got the rest of them with drugged food, and wonders why he didn't just finish them all off. Bobby breaks through the door and says it can't be kidnapping because they are alone on a boat. He wonders why the rest of the crew joined Castro and thinks it cannot be only because they are mutants. He then wonders if it was another attempt to stop his mother, like the one that was made in the last issue in Rio. When he gets to the main deck of the ship, he sees the murdered captain, and to his horror, he sees that the boat is heading towards the side of the fork in the river that the captain warned him about. He then notices that the engine is sabotaged and won't work. He curses the crew for leaving them in such a horrible position. He warns everyone they are going to hit the rapids. Really, it looks more like a waterfall to me, but I guess I'm nitpicking maybe. The boat goes over the falls and it breaks apart, and the kids and Nina are thrown into the water. Cannonball is jerked awake by the feeling of the cold water and begins to blast. He rescues Psyche. Sunspot tries to rescue his mother, but a piece of debris hits him on the head and she drifts off, sinking into the water. This is kind of weird. I'm just gonna note this here because, doesn't he normally just, break things apart, or things break apart on top of him? I don't know why this knocked him out. Sunspot is still somewhat awake, though, and tries to swim to save his mother, but is drugged underneath the water by the undertow and seemingly to his death. But Cannonball rescues him. Wolfsbane is awake and makes her way towards Amara, who is seen floating off. Wolfsbane managed to grab onto her, but for a moment Amara is completely submerged. When Rain pulls her back up again out of the water, it is revealed that she was wearing a disguise. Don't worry, we will talk about this later. And now Amara looks totally different. While Wolfsbane is trying to get her out of the water, she instructs Amara to kick and swim and fight the current, to which Amara replies in English that she will try. Wolfsbane is mortified that Amara speaks English and tells her that it was cruel of Amara to not tell her that she could understand what she was saying. Rain says the things she said she wouldn't have even told a best friend. Rain is angry and upset, but knows that Amara needs to be helped anyways, and manages to get Amara out of the water and up onto a rock. Cannonball then flies towards them and carries them both to safety, but not before asking Rain who she has with her. And Rain explains it's the Indian girl that they had captured, to which Sam says she looks different. Wolfsbane also says she can't find Nina. Wolfsbane elaborates that she cannot find Nina's scent. Cannonball says she tried her best, but Sunspot will take this really hard. When Amara, Wolfsbane, and Cannonball get to shore where Psyche and Sunspot are waiting, Bobby begins to cry and completely lose it, screaming that his mother must be somewhere and they have to find her. Sam tries to hold him back from the river while he is in anguish about his mother. Sam tells him that they barely made it back and they did all they could. Bobby screams, "Mother, mother," but then from behind them they hear a voice say in English, "Stand where you are, barbarians." The mutants all turn to look at who's talking to them, and they all look shocked. Sam asks if he is dreaming, and Bobby says that his mother was right about the legends. Behind the kids is a squad of what looks like ancient Roman soldiers dressed in gold-shining armor. The soldier in the front tells them to be quiet and that they are now prisoners of the 4th Maniple, 1st Cohort, Thunderclap Legion, and they are therefore now slaves of Imperial Rome, and that is where the issue ends. The next issue, number 9, is called Arena. Thoughts upon first reading. So I thought I remembered a lot about this issue before I reread it, but it turns out I had some things wrong. First of all, I remembered a plane crash for some reason instead of a boat crash getting the kids captured. I also thought I remembered Nina being with the kids when they got captured. I didn't remember anything about Amara being captured, which in hindsight seems kind of strange that this was wiped from my mind. This was an arc that I always thought was kind of strange in the overall storyline of the New Mutants, which I suppose makes it really odd considering the weirder places that these mutants travel to during the series. I am not a fan of stories set in the jungle just in general, and I never really have been. Ever since I was small, even imagining to be in that environment really made me uncomfortable because I hate the heat. I know jungles are interesting environments and really beautiful, but I don't know. I think it's just a personal preference. I don't really love stories in the Savage Land either. I don't know why. Also, I get distracted easily when looking at art of jungle environments. As I'm saying this, I'm realizing how weird this sounds. Okay, I don't hate jungles or anything. They just aren't my favorite. I prefer stories that take place in cities or space or traditional high fantasy realms or even the countryside. I guess I find them more visually appealing. This is hard to explain, so I'll just leave it there. So this was never one of my favorites. The first time I read this, though, I think I was 12 or 13, and the last time I read this was in 2016. I did reread a lot of issues in 2016 when I was going through a really hard time personally, and these comics were a great comfort. So I guess I should explain this while I'm placing which issues were my favorite when I originally read them. When I was a child and began reading comics, I had a habit of carrying at least 10 issues of whatever my favorite story arcs were at that moment with me wherever I went, whether it be going to my grandparents on the weekends, a friend's house, school, or even out to eat. I always carried comics with me. I would often just zone out in places and read comic books if at all possible. I was probably super awkward and very rude, kind of often, but I'm still kind of like this. I often bring things like sketchbooks or whatever to parties or to small events, so I kind of judge which comics rank higher than others by how often I carried them with me. I know my very favorites, but I tried to bring different things from the ones I liked best from time to time. So let me just say the Amara Nova Roma Amazon arc was not one I carried with me very often. Also, I'm going to admit this right here, since we just talked about her first appearance. I really didn't like Amara when I was reading this series originally, and I actually used to mispronounce her name like up until I reread this recently, and I would call her Amara, but I'm realizing now her name is probably Amara. I didn't hate her or anything, but I always just felt kind of annoyed by her. I'm wondering now if it was some sort of misplaced misogyny on my part, something that maybe I wasn't super aware of. I think it might have annoyed me that she was so pretty and really didn't seem to have much personality in my view back when I originally read this. I'm curious to see how I feel about her this time around. Already I'm finding myself more interested in reading about her than I ever was in the past. I guess when I was younger, the core group of New Mutants I felt really worked together and all had very interesting personalities. Amara, to me, always felt distant, and honestly never felt to me like she vibed very well with the rest of the kids. I guess also my feelings towards her were more colored as well because she leaves the New Mutants for the Massachusetts Academy, home of the New Mutants' nemesis team, the Hellions, but I'll get into them later because they're coming up in the issues ahead. I felt like she was kind of whiny too when I was younger. Her attitude towards things just bothered me. When I was younger, I felt like Amara did not make the efforts the other kids did to try and be a part of a team and get along with one another. I think also I have to admit This is pretty messed up of me, but I found her kind of annoying because Bobby and Sam initially were kind of both vying for her attention, and this made me feel like she was kind of making the group turn on one another, but honestly, this was not her fault, and she wasn't encouraging this behavior at all, but we will talk about this aspect of Amara in future issues. So basically, it really wasn't fair of me to think that, though. I'll say that already right now. So basically, I feel like I didn't really have good reasons for disliking Amara in the past. And I'm saying right now to Amara, Amara, let's start anew. I am open to trying to push past my original dislike of her and see her through a more mature, conscious, and maybe balanced perspective. But yeah, I didn't like Amara that much. And because of that, these issues were not really my favorites. Thoughts upon rereading. So I was really excited to get into this arc, not because I thought it would be a really great read or like groundbreaking, but more that I knew this was going to be a monstrous mess when I looked at it again. There's so much to say about this, but let me get the first and most blatant issue out of the way, the blackface. So Amara is disguised in blackface when the mutants originally meet her. Now I know what you're thinking, that Amara is not in blackface to demean brown people or for a really obviously racist reason. I know this is true. Given where Amara comes from, she has none of the intent behind her blackface that we would assume a person from our world and times would have behind doing this. Of course, I would never say she was trying to purposely harm people of color with her disguise. I did not remember this aspect of the story at all, so when it happened, I was just like, ah! I'm not really going out on a limb here, at least I don't think I am, when I say maybe you shouldn't use brown face as a plot device. Again, I don't think this was incredibly nefarious. Also, it was the 80s, things were a lot different then. But why couldn't you just have Amara dye her hair or something? I will save discussion of why she is hiding her identity for the next issue where it is explained. But yeah, the whole thing with the local women and the brown face, we can all agree that it's at the very least not in very good taste, right? Also, Sam flat out kidnaps a girl. Apparently the New Mutants take hostages now. Why would they think kidnapping a girl is a good idea? And why did they think that the other people she was with wouldn't regroup and come after her? For all the training they are doing, they sure aren't thinking very clearly. What did they plan to do with her after they tried to question her? Just release her somewhere random? Wherever they landed on the boat? Possibly many miles away from her home? Like, what were they thinking? I like how they are aware that maybe they just startled the women, but then they leaped to the conclusion that the women had also been watching them for a while. How does Danny really know the women have been watching them? Also, they assume that the women have plans to hurt them. What if the women were just curious and saw strangers and decided to watch them, then got startled when Sam and Danny literally blasted through the effing air towards them? If the women had no experience with mutants, which might be a likely thing, of course, a person flying towards you, half on fire, might feel threatening. I know I'm thinking about this too hard, and all of this, including the blackface, is just a plot device and a way to get Amara to the kids and for them to find their way to the hidden civilization. But part of me just can't help but wonder, would Sam have been that rough with Amara if she had not been in disguise? Maybe I'm being too harsh, but yeah, this is all just a little outdated to say the least. Also, Danny says you got a souvenir while Sam is manhandling Amara, which is a choice. And speaking of Danny, why did she randomly strip and jump into the river in the middle of the Amazon? Did she just randomly shut off her brain? Did the jungle heat fry it? She even mentions that Nina warned them not to get into the water. WTF was she thinking? Also, was she just leaving her clothes behind? I guess one of the kids could have picked them up. What was the point of this? It seems like every issue the writers or illustrators are just looking for an excuse to put Danny in the tiniest amount of clothing possible. I guess it would have been too insensitive to put an assault victim like Shan in a revealing outfit. Spoilers, not that they don't do that later. I'm glad that they had at least enough sense not to do that right now. Plus, Shan is gone at this point, and Rain is not coded as sexy. She is very, very young, and she's like the little sister. But I'm pretty sure they even do weird stuff with her in the future. So I guess the only female left out of those options is Danny. I know guys often get this treatment too, but it's usually in situations that make at least a little more sense. I mean, I know they had to show Castro being evil so that we knew he was evil, but this was also so weird. How could he have possibly known Danny would take stupid pills and dive into a foreign river she was warned not to go into? I know this is just kind of bad writing, but it's also kind of silly when you really think about it. I totally didn't realize how much nonsense was in this issue, even the last time I read it. This is such a weird issue, and I know the next issues only get weirder. So if you're watching this now and wondering why the New Mutants is so close to my heart when it has issues that are like this, I implore you to keep going with this series. Things improve a lot very soon, and there are some really beautiful and magical things that are to come with this comic book. These early issues are just kind of strange, and they are really looking for their footing still in many ways. Think about how much X-Men changes as it goes on. It's unfair to judge the New Mutants by these very early issues, and thank God it keeps going and didn't get canceled, because what we get later is really, really great. Also, I already kind of snarked on this, but just because Rain thinks there is snow doesn't mean her probable heat stroke would go away. It's the little strange things like this in this issue that make it so odd. Also, we do see Team America for a single panel, but I believe that's the last we ever see of them in the New Mutants. And, like, the kids are training themselves, but Team America is still getting most of Xavier's attention. Whatever, I guess. I really feel like Xavier is pretty negligent of the kids. I find it really sad that Bobby is already mourning his friend and his girlfriend Juliana, and now he has to think he failed to save his own mother. I think this trauma from the beginning of the series does color his character for the rest of the run and into other comic books he appears in afterwards. I feel these events make him even more emotional and at times unpredictable. He has a fiery temper to match his burning sunspot form, I guess. I want to say that his mother is not actually dead, but I honestly don't remember if she is or not, so I'm leaving that as a surprise for the reread. Please don't spoil it in the comments. I'm trying very hard not to read ahead during this reread so I can just have a candid reaction to each issue, especially the earlier issues I remember less about. To go back to Bobby, Sam says to Rain about Bobby's mom going missing that Bobby's going to take this hard, which is like, yeah, of course he will. It's his mother. Of course he's going to take it hard. I don't understand the point of Sam saying this. He doesn't need to tell us this. We, the reader, aren't stupid. The moment with Rain saying she always gets bonked on the head was also kind of funny. Also, she says she has a wee small brain, but her skull is thick to protect it. What, Rain? What? So this is the beginning of a bizarre and somehow kind of captivating story, and so far the reread was bonkers and yet entertaining. Final rating. I gave this issue a 5 out of 10. I gave it a 2 for art because the art was nice in this, but I deducted a point for the weirdly racist stuff, and a 1 for the story. I don't think this was particularly well written, but it's not unreadable. A 0.5 for character development because we do meet Amara and Bobby seemingly loses his mother, and a 0.5 for does it hold up. I gave it half a point instead of 0 because parts were just so absurd to read that it was still okay and fun. So what did you think? Do you agree it's uncomfortable at points during this? Would you swim across a river that may contain dangerous creatures on a whim? Let me know in the comments. Next time we get to a new locale, we find out more about Amara and much more. As always, I'm hoping you're doing well. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And I hope you have a great day or night. Aisling out.